Good morning, and what a beautiful day, and to see so many faces here. You know, when we're little kids, and there's some people here. Becky, you said you're here as a small child, visitors from the camp. You know, this would be filled, and we'd have people up on top, and I'd be in Sunday school up here. Jamie would be my teacher, and so many of you were all here too when we were so young. And so this has been a very, very special place for so many of us. So thanks for coming here and sharing this. You know, I'm John, of course. I'm Betty and John's son in the back with my family. And, you know, when Pastor Lauder first asked, two things came to mind. The first one was a lot of doubt, right? A lot of doubt. Imagine you up here, right? Things are a little bit different when you're on this side. And so a lot of doubt. But immediately, that went away. And the second thing that flashed in my mind was Matthew Kent. Now, Matthew had given his sermon here. He filled in for Rick a while back. And his sermon was about Jonah, and God asking Jonah to go to Nineveh. And Jonah said, oh, no way. I'm the opposite direction. And he did. He went in the opposite direction. We know what happened, right? He gets swallowed by the big fish. I'm not saying that Matthew has that power or Pastor Lauder does, but certainly we are in New England. I didn't want to end up that way. So I decided, so I told Matthew after that sermon, I said, you spoke to me, and I know why now, because I was going to be called to come up here. So I'm not a stranger to the church. I've been here at 13. I accepted Christ, my Lord and Savior here. Rick Lauder, Pastor Lauder, gave me at the time my diploma at high school, Portsmouth High School. So we go way back. And then I went into the Army. I'd end up coming back here again, I think about age 31 or so. I got married to my wife here. So it's here again at the altar. So I'm not a stranger to the church, but certainly not from this side. I am you. I'm not trained, but it's a wonderful thing about the beautiful thing about the Friends Church and the Religious Society of Friends and the Quaker Church is the ability to speak and give your testimony. So I'll give a little bit of that. I'll tell you some stories. It'll be a little bit of a journey. Might get a little emotional. It's okay. We're just going to strap in. We're going to go for that ride together. And it's going to be okay. Trust me. It's going to be okay. Well, I'm not supposed to be here, right? Like many of you, probably had a lot of close calls in life, right? And a lot, right? And so physically probably shouldn't be here, but I also shouldn't be here career-wise. Now, nobody has been that close to not being around because things have happened as my father. You know, if you ever listen to my father's stories, you'll say, how did you survive to 80 years old? You know, this is impossible. And many of you have those same stories. But I should be in a different career right now. I should have, and I was expected to. And that was what I was going to do. I was going to take the uniform off on a Friday. And then on Monday, I was coming right back into the same office in a civilian suit and tie. And that was going to be my career for the next 10, 15, 20 years. That's what was going to happen. That was my destination. That's what I was supposed to do. That's what I thought I was told to do. As you know in the sermon for today is wake up, right? Wake up. What are you waiting for? God's in command. God's in command. And so that point, and it affected everybody's life. And that was COVID. So this is about a year now. So you've seen me around a lot more. So it was about a year ago, a little year and some change, months. And so what happened? So COVID. So, you know, it's interesting, COVID, if you look at the history of the world, I don't know what other single event ever happened that you can go to anywhere in the world, the Netherlands, you can go anywhere and talk to somebody and have a conversation about COVID because it affected everybody. Everybody. And so it affected me too, right? And it caused us because we work in a place that you have to surrender your phone. You go behind a vault, you do combos, and you don't have touch with the outside world. You do other things. And so because of that, we had to go home. And we had to do shifts. And so at home, oh man, I had a lot of time to think and start to reflect and start to question. And it was just a wonderful experience. Now, that was on my side. There are people here that are in the health industry and other folks that could not do that because of their job and had to do things. So thank you, those that the nurses and the health folks, and had to continue to push through all those things. But I had a chance to sit back and reflect. And so my journey. So you're also on a journey because guess what? We all have the same destination. We all have the same destination. And we're all on a journey together. And so what was my journey going to look like? So the encouragement of my wife, she said, hey, you should take some time off. I have a very good friend, he's Thai, and he says, Kopna Gala, which means the frog living in a coconut shell. He says, your entire life you've been living in this world. He says, you got to take that off. You got to see what else is out there. And so I said, okay. So I said, I'm going to take 12 months, and I'm going to travel. A lot of solitude. And you know, in our Christian faith, and if you talk about it, you know, God speaks in silence and solitude. You need some solitude. I needed that solitude. For years, all I did was react to everything that came in. Constant reaction. Constant. I get out of the car, I have somebody waiting for me, and I go upstairs, I got somebody waiting for me there, emails, messages. And you guys live that. You know what I'm talking about. I needed to break away, so I did. I broke away. I said, I'm going to do mind, body, soul. All right, that makes sense. I can figure out mind and body, what to do, you know. And if you want any keys and tips on how to sharpen the mind and memorization, I can do all that stuff. I did a lot of that studying. But soul, what do you do for spirit? I'm like, wow, well, let me go back and read Scripture. Let me get a little bit more into the Bible, like I used to. Let me be a little bit more reflective. And I did that. And so, but what was going to be my spiritual practice? What was I going to do? And so my wife says, well, hey, you know, you're looking at that thing in Sedona. You should go out there. So there's a place in Sedona that does some really good, well, let me back up. Sedona, Arizona, if you've not been there, it's a beautiful spot. If you think of, have you heard of the Bermuda Triangle? It's kind of like the negative vortex. Well, this is the opposite. This would be a positive vortex, where you have a lot of positive people there, and it's, the Indians consider it a very sacred place. And so there's a lot of practitioners out there. I said, let me go out there and study some breathing and maybe meditation and just kind of force myself to take a step in a direction that I'm going to be serious about some spiritual practices. So I did that. And I invited my sister out, too. And it was a wonderful journey for her. In some cases, life-changing, but certainly a course direction change. And so while there, this is very interesting, this happened. And it was at night. It was after a day. And sleep. Woke up 2:30 in the morning. Something woke me up. It was a voice in the room. Woke me up. Dead sleep. Now, to give you an idea, I'm a good sleeper. That is one of the blessings that I have. I can do some deep sleep. I can sleep so well. I'll give you an example. Early days in Afghanistan, about 2001, I am a aide, executive officer, bodyguard to a general officer. And we're sharing a little room together. A very little room. And 2 cots. We're sleeping, right? And I sleep with something hard under my pillow, right, to protect us. And that you shouldn't even be able to sleep like that. But in the morning, he goes, did you not hear that? And I go, hear what, sir? He said, it sounded like it was the 4th of July outside. And they weren't celebrating the 4th of July. And I said, sir, I didn't hear it. And so he has some, you know, generals have a very good sense of humor. I think Marcy, we were talking about, Marcy and Mash, right? They have a very good sense of humor, and they can certainly use some adjectives to describe how they felt about me not protecting them in the morning. So I am a deep sleeper. So when I tell you a voice woke me up, and it was a single word. It was 5. 5. Okay, so my instinct kicks in. Intruder in the house. I go right into that mode, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. Intruder, right? Nope. Nobody's in the house. Okay. Must be my sister. She must have opened up the door and said something. Nope. That wasn't it either. And I'm like, wow. Because it wasn't a female voice. It wasn't a male voice. It was just perfect. It was clear. It was crisp. It was unambiguous. It was 5. So, as you can imagine, I've had a lot of 5s in my life now. I start going back and looking at it. My sister was born on the 5th, you know. There are so many 5s. I belong to a special forces group. It was 5th Special Forces. All these things started coming back, but still that 5. And so for 12 months, because it happened exactly 12 months ago. So when I started my spiritual journey 12 months ago, hearing the 5, and now I'm here with you. So a lot of things have happened in that time. So now I go back to when Pastor Lauder asked me to speak. Remember, I talked about, you know, how do I get out of this, right? And so that night, I'm lying awake, woke up again, early in the morning. Something about 2:30 or something. It's waking me up, right? Good, yeah, I'm a deep sleeper. But I got to sing, and now it's just my own internal voice. And I'm saying, Lord, what am I going to talk about at the Friends Church? What's the message? What am I supposed to say? 5. 5. 5-5. Starts playing in my head. 5-5, 5-5. And I'm rolling over, and I'm trying to cover up, Nope, it's getting louder and louder. 5-5, 5-5. I was like, all right, I got it. I'm going to get up. So I get up, and I said, okay, I was reading a lot of Matthew. And I said, it's got to be in Matthew, because I just love the Gospel of Matthew. It must be Matthew, So I'd go right there. So that's where I'm going. So I grab my Bible, grab my flashlight, turn it on. The flashlight's flickering on and off. It won't stay on. I'm like, oh. My Kindle, little electronic reader, that's sitting on the shelf. And that I had lost it for like 10 months, and I had just found it that week. I had recharged it. I hadn't opened it yet. And I said, I'm pretty sure I have my Bible app. It's on the Kindle. So I'll wake up my wife. So I open up the Kindle and open it up, and I'm going to go straight to Matthew. That Kindle turns on, and it brights up, poof, hits me, right? And it's the Gospel according to John. Got my attention. John. I'm like, all right, I got it. What chapter? Chapter 5. Chapter 5. So I go, okay, all right, get the goosebumps now, chapter 5. So go with me, guys, to page 1516, Gospel according to John. Let's go to 5:5. You read with me. So, healing by the pool, one who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. That's it. I'm like, I don't know. What does 38 have to do? I don't understand. So I said, okay, let me go to the beginning. I'm missing something, right? It's too many coincidences. I mean, at this age, do you guys believe coincidence? I don't know, right? So I go back. So we'll just read together. So starting from 5 down through 8. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. I said, okay, you're leading me in here to something, I don't know what. Here, a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, do you want to get well? He asked him, do you want to get well? Sir, the invalid replied, I have no one to help me into the pool. When the water is stirred, as being stirred by the angels, while I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. Then Jesus said to him, get up, pick up your mat and walk. Get up, wake up. I read through the whole thing. I went back again to read through, and that's when it hit me. That's when it hit me, the 38. So, I had joined the military, spent 4 years. Got out as a non-commissioned officer. I went 4 years into Reserve Officer Training Candidate School. I spent 30 years as a commissioned officer. It was 38 years, exactly. And when I had that time of COVID for reflection, I stopped. I walked away. Something else was telling me to go. Pick up your mat and go. Get up. Wake up. What are you doing? You've done your time. You need to do something else now. So friends, I got to ask, where are you in your life? What's your pool? Where are you? What's your pool of Bethesda that's holding you back? Whether that's spiritual, whether it's emotional. Is there something that's holding you back? Is it a change in job? Is it a moving? What is that? What is that's holding you back from actually picking up your mat and going? That struck me. And, if you go back and, when he asked me, he says, do you want to get well? So this is the question for us. Do you want to get well? Do you spiritually want to get well? Well, you got to take some action. Because Jesus didn't pick the mat up for him, didn't pick him up. He said, pick it up. You've got to do the work. You got to meet him halfway. So he did. But it's very interesting because if you look at 7, he says, sir, the invalid replied, I have no one here to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. Well, I'm trying to get in, someone else bumps me, they block me. Well, that sounds a whole lot like complaining, doesn't it? A lot of excuses. But here's the other thing. If you defend your limitations, you get to keep them. I can't do this. Woe is me. Well, you get to keep it. That's how it works. So I found it fascinating. So there's a couple of lessons here unpacking. One is, if you're going to get up and move, be curious. Listen. Listen. See the things that are happening around you and see how they relate. It's a living Word of God. Now, I had to go back. I wasn't the brightest guy. I had to go back a couple of times to kind of figure it out. But it spoke to me, and then it made sense. Then I said, okay, well, that's leaving, picking up, and going. What if you're carrying something? Have you ever had a burden on you that is, in the military, we carry rucksacks, right? Really heavy things, right, and equipment and stuff. And the ladies, of course, if you had children, you're carrying, and just anything that's ever carried anything that's really, really heavy, right? You're carrying this heavy burden. So there's a wonderful story. We have a friend that's a monk, and he tells me, well, I didn't know he was a monk, first of all. He'd been a monk for like 10, almost 15 years, and I never knew it. I said, how did you not tell me that? And how did I not know that? And he's like, well, you weren't ready to know. I'm like, wow. He says, you were so busy doing military stuff and focused on other things, you didn't have time. You never stopped to ask or know, question. He said, you're in a different place now. He said, I'll tell you everything you want to know. Let's have a conversation. And he tells a story. It's about 2 monks, and I've mentioned this to my sister because this is about burden. So if you take something from the pool, what if you need to leave something behind? And the story goes, there are 2 monks, and they're going to a monastery, and it's 3 days away. And as they get ready to leave, and in this tradition, this monastery, their vow is never to touch a woman. I'm not sure about speaking, but certainly never touch a woman. That's their vow. That's how they do their spiritual practice and so forth. So they're on their walk. Very early in the first day, they come down to a river. And as they approach the river, and they can wade across it, but they're going to get wet. They can get across it. There's a young woman running back and forth frantically, trying to get across the river. And she goes right up to the older monk. She says, sir, will you help me? And he said, yes. Climb up on my back, and I'll get you across. So she does. Climbs up on his back, and he carries her across, and she doesn't get wet. She's very grateful, and they go their separate ways. They go on to the monastery. On the third day, when they get right before they get to the monastery, they can see the monastery up on the hill, and as they're walking up, the younger monk says, stop. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. We took a vow. How did you touch that woman? Well, that's not who we are. Why did you do that? And he looked at him, just kind of smiled, and he said, brother, he said, I am surprised you're still carrying her. I left her at the river 3 days ago. I left her at the river 3 days ago. Why are you still carrying that? So what's that burden that you're carrying, right? What's that thing? I have a lot of friends, and they go, by principle. By principle, I'm not going to apologize. By principle, this person crossed me. No, forgive. We were talking about it earlier. You need a whole lot more love and peace in the world. It starts with forgiving, right? Leave that burden. So I told you, when you carry that heavy pack and you're moving, right? You know what it feels like when you take that off? Now, that's a physical thing. How about emotional? I bet, and you guys could probably tell me otherwise and preach to me. Hey, that burden, that's really, really heavy. You talk about a spiritual, emotional burden, that'll wear you down. You're not going to be able to go on the spiritual path if you've got that kind of a burden on you. So you've got to jettison that. So if either you're picking something up at the river or you need to leave something behind, that's what you need to do if you want to be on the spiritual path, right? If you want to draw closer to God, that's what you need to do to get on that path. And so for me, again, going back to 38 years, leaving burdens, so what are some of the things for me? How did I share burdens and stuff? Because I got to reconcile, I went into the military, and I just didn't go into the medical service, or I went into infantry, ranger, all this stuff. It's kind of, in our tradition, in the Friends Church in Quaker, that's, first is simplicity. If you're just talking general values, simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equality. And not only did I do that, but I went into all these other hard things, right? So I'm thinking, how does this all come about? So I think for all of us, we are at a certain place in our lives and have done certain things in our lives because that's what God wanted us to do. God's in command. He has made us do certain things for certain experiences, whatever those might be. I don't know. I'm still on my journey. But there are two stories I'll tell you very quickly that relate to emotions. So I need you to strap in a little bit on this one, okay? Just a little bit. We call this the emotional roller coaster. So for spouses, male or female, when you get orders to go and move to another place, and you guys know this best, right? You get permanent change of station orders, right? And so that means you got to put the kids in a different school. That means you got to get a different job. Do you sell your house? Do you rent your house? When are you moving? What job do you have? You got to make new friends. On and on. It's like this, and then you're waiting for your orders, and it's late, and it's delayed, and so forth. So these are these emotional roller coasters. So I'd ask you to kind of strap in a little bit. So I get called back, and I get called back to 5th Special Forces Group. So this is where I know God has a sense of humor, and this is where God has kind of planned something out for me. So one is, whoever got back to the team group, right, 5th group, would immediately land and then go to Iraq and take a company there. That's a great thing. That's what you want to do. That's what you're trained to do. The second person that gets there, oh, no, you're in charge of the families and all of the gear in the rear. That is not something you want to do. In fact, you want to be in combat. You don't want to be back there with hundreds of families. That is hard mission. Really, really hard. So that ends up happening. But when I got there, I said, okay, this is my fate. This is what I'm going to do. But I learned something here in church as a young man, watching everybody here, because actions speak louder than words. And I saw how when you are assigned something, you're given something, a task, you do it to the best of your ability. You just do the best job you can. You do it for the glory of God, but you do the best job you can. The second part, my father taught me a long time ago, my brother knows this, and we know this from the family, and that is anticipate the next thing that's going to happen. Amen. Father, you want to work with somebody, work with my father, right? Yeah. You got to anticipate his next move. He's thinking, you got to give him that tool, right? Doing a tile mechanic and so forth, marble. So anticipating, so what was I most concerned about being back there? Well, the worst possible thing that could happen is somebody could be killed in our teams, right? That's the worst possible thing that could happen. And so that was the thing that was on my mind. So the first thing we do, because we're very detailed, we're going to follow through, every person that's deployed has a package, a packet. That packet in there tells exactly what you're supposed to do with that person, unfortunately, if he is given his last full measure, he or she. And in that packet will be how you want to be buried, when you want to be cremated, what's the songs you want played at your ceremony. All these things will be in that packet, to include a picture of yourself and your family, to include strip maps to the spouse's place of work or home. That's how detailed we are. So the inevitable happened. I'm at home, dinner, get the call late, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, immediately report to the office. I already know what it is. Got there, went immediately, got my package. We lost 2. I had a bunch of wounded. They were in my company. And so Colonel said, hey, come to my office with the packages. So I walked in. So while I'm walking to give him those packets, something spoke to me. Again, this is where you, again, solitude and that quietness. Instead of going straight to the headquarters, which wasn't very far away, but I was so prepared I had it. So he was expecting me in 15 minutes. I could have been there in 2. I need to take a walk. And I did. I took a walk around the parade field. I came back. And what God had told me, or my spirit, or I don't know, just said, hey, you need to share the burden. You need to help. It's not my responsibility, but you need help. I said, okay. So I went in, so I gave him the packets, and I said, sir, I'll take the other one. I'll do the other notification, casualty notification. He looked at me. He said, you sure? And I said, yes, I'm sure. I'll do it. He said, okay, perfect. Because it's split too far apart, so we can't meet at the same time. Because what you're up against in a situation like that is you're up against time. And you don't want anything to get leaked out to the media. You don't want friends. It's a lockdown phone. Nobody talks to each other. It's a lockdown completely. And so we did. So we prepped, and the Army's come a long way from the way they used to do it. They used to do it with a telegram, or somebody that you didn't know would just show up in uniform and tell you if you were lucky. But generally, you just got a taxi cab driver and give out. So we said, no, we notify our own. So that's what we'll do. So that morning we go, and so you go in a group. You have a chaplain. So I had my chaplain. I had my sergeant major, which is a very senior non-commissioned officer, E8, E9, and another friend with us that would help drive because it became an emotional event. And so before we got there, again, doing a whole lot of praying, right, before you go in there. We're a very spiritual crew, trust me, right? When you're close to these things, you become very spiritual. So before we got in the car, I asked the chaplain, this is great words of advice, I said, hey, so chaplain, before we go in and I give my official notification, I said, what do I say next? And he looked at me and he said, you don't say anything. You don't say a single word. You give the official notification, and that's it. He said, there's nothing you can say that's going to bring that person back. There's nothing that's going to say that's going to make that person feel better. Nothing. Don't say a word. I thought, wow, what? Again, wisdom, right? I said, okay. So we get out of the car, we walk to the house. It's not very far. And as I'm walking to the house, I hear piano music playing. Beautiful. And I know in about 5 seconds, the people on that other side of that door, their entire life's going to change. And mine too, right? It's going to change completely. Because they have no idea what's coming. None. Knock on the door. She opens. I identify. Confirm it's her. I tell her who I am. And I give her the official notification on behalf of a grateful nation. And finish. And she stepped back and she just looked and she was in shock. But I think she was more in shock because she couldn't fathom, because she had just spoken to him the night before. She didn't understand. She's like, he's coming home tonight. I don't understand. And what I couldn't tell her at the time that I knew was he had volunteered for one last mission. He was the first guys out. They had been there for 8, 9 months. They were coming home. So he was the first one out. And he had already been in Afghanistan. So at that point, when it finally sunk in, she grabbed her son, who was playing piano, and they ran upstairs. And that's when the emotions hit, right? Because now you're standing in their home that you just invaded, by the way. You came in with this news, and now you're standing there. And you're just faced with that. It's very emotional. I needed the strength. So, Philippians 14:3, I believe, is, you can do all things through Christ, who strengthens me. And I kept hearing the chaplain's voice, right? And then my sergeant major stands next to me, and he grabs my hand, he squeezes it really hard, because I guess I was somewhere else. And he grabbed it really hard. And they're still upstairs, and he goes, look up, look up. And up on these banisters, just like here, they had stayed up all night long making posters. Welcome home, Dad. We love you. We miss you. Gut-wrenching, right? So, strap on. All right, so the house gets real quiet. Really, really quiet. Really quiet. The door opens up. I can hear the little boy, and he says to his mother, it's going to be okay, Mom. You got to go downstairs and talk to these men. It's going to be okay. Now, he leads her down the stairs. And she comes straight up to me, and she goes, what do I need to do next? Those are the 2 bravest people I ever met. All the years that I worked, all the things that I did, those are the 2 bravest people I ever met. Little 5-year-old and the mother. Now, that, there's so much to unpack there. But what I will tell you is, sometimes God asks you to do things that you don't want to do. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to, but I was supposed to. I wasn't supposed to be downrange. I was supposed to be there helping families out. That was my mission. That was what I was supposed to do. And I was supposed to do it right. There's no error in that. You have to do that right. And so that was what I was charged with. So now I'll shift it, because this helps me kind of reconcile on the SF stuff, on Special Forces. So again, God has this sense of humor. He says, okay, well, if you're going to do 30 years, and you're going to do it with an organization, why don't you do it with a group and groups that work in 12-man teams? I go, 12, that sounds familiar. All right, 12. It's only 12-man teams? Yeah, they work in 12-man teams, and you build that. Okay, 12-man teams. And now we have women in those teams, too, which is fabulous. So now it's real quality. Hard. I don't understand, but it's hard, right? So 12-man teams. On top of that, he says, you know what? You know what the symbol is for us in Special Forces? You wear it on your rank. It's crossed arrows. So in the infantry, you'd have crossed rifles. Artillery, you'd have crossed cannons. In Special Forces, you have crossed arrows. You know what crossed arrows are? That was adopted from the Native Scouts. And the Native Scouts, that was for, it meant friendship and peace. So 12-man teams, friendship and peace. Okay, I like that. That sounds good. And then our motto in Latin is De oppresso liber, which means to free the oppressed. You're always working for the little guy. You're always trying to free those that are being oppressed. I said, okay. Well, God has a sense of humor. If you're going to do something, you probably want to do something like that. So that's what I did for all those years. So now I find myself in Iraq, and I'll just close with this last story, and that is I'm on the opposite end. And they're like, hey, you guys are new. Good, because this is your first mission. It's our last mission. I'm like, oh, man, I don't like the sound of the last mission for you guys. And our first, not a good time, right? Because last and first, last maybe because you become a little too overconfident. First, you're maybe not as confident as you should be. And so they said, no, we're going to come together and we're going to do that. And I said, okay, so here's your plan. You inherit the whole plan. And I said, I'm in charge, though, right? And they said, yep, you're in charge. I said, good, because I'm going to change the plan. I don't like kind of the things that you have planned in here. Maybe this is my Quaker in me. Maybe this is my pacifist in me. Maybe this is my nonconformist in me. But I said, I don't like your plan. I said, instead of just using a time hack where everybody that's a threat disappears, I said, I want to give them another chance. And so we can put teams up along our guys that are going to pull a trigger. And I said, let's do something different. Let's do a loudspeaker in Arabic. Down your weapons. Let's put some spotlight on them. Let's just give them one thing. And if they don't, then that's okay. I mean, they're combatants. I mean, that's how it works. And they were bad people. On top of that, it was a religious site. It was a mosque. Now, it wasn't a full dome mosque, but it was a mosque. And so, again, very, very sensitive. So now I got a very sensitive mission. So, again, who gets it? Well, the Quaker gets it. Oh, this is sensitive? Yeah, hard? Yeah, we'll give it to you. So, had that. And then, so we rehearsed it. We did that. I was not a popular guy, by the way. These are a bunch of guys, big egos, right? And what do you mean you're changing the plan? This is the way we always do it. I'm like, no, I'm in charge now. He said, I'm in charge. So that's how we changed the plan up. So now, right before, and we love doing things early in the morning. If you haven't figured that out, those that have been in the military and stuff, right? So our time is maybe 0200, something like that, in the morning. So right before we get to roll out, I get my last intel update. And a captain comes running over to me and he says, hey, sir, I got the latest information on the target. I said, okay, great, what you got? He goes, doesn't look good. Don't look good at all. He said, I think they've been tipped off. They know we're coming. They're bringing boundaries. They're blocking the road. So they're channelizing us in a certain direction now we have to go, which is not good. And they're bringing out heavy weapons. And I said, okay, what kind of heavy weapons? He said, well, those type of things that actually can shoot down airplanes. And I said, ooh, that's not good because we came in cars like yours. And vehicles, that was before we had up-armor things. And I said, okay. And he says, you need to pray. You need to say a prayer for us. That was the first time I ever did a prayer in front of like a whole bunch of people. You need to pray for us. I said, okay, gather the men around. So we did. So we gathered everybody around. Beautiful, dark desert sky, beautiful lights. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful night. And I said a prayer. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but I know I asked for God's protection. And I know I've concluded the Special Forces prayer in the back here, and I used some of those words. But that was a prayer of protection. So we're on radio silence when we roll out the gate, because it's our duty. That's what we do. So we rolled out the gate, and the first crackle of the radio that I got was, sir, we're inside. We got him. I'm like, wow, how'd that happen? He goes, there were no obstacles. They were gone. No weapons. They were gone, too. The guys on the roof, yeah, they threw down their weapons and they threw up their hands. We got them all. Not a single shot fired on either side. And I said, wow, thank you, Lord. Thank you. So, I don't know where we are in life on our journeys and what we're supposed to do. I know, man, if you listen, and if you put your ego off to the side and you ask for help, and those tough things, right? Now, you say, well, that's you in that situation. But I would argue and say, you're going through it every single day. You're in your own battle every day, making hard decisions. What's the decision you're going to make? You have the same types of emotions and fears, the same thing that we felt there. Exact same. There's no difference. None. Just it's a different environment. It's a different perspective. Matt and I were talking about perspective. If you ever get a chance to stand here, and Don, you will, if you look right there at that shutter, there's a beautiful cross just made perfectly in the light. You have to come up here before you leave today and look at that. But if you pay attention and you listen, I think God works in those mysterious ways. How do you end up there? But it's all about your perspective. Your perspective and where you are in life. But you're facing the same things that I face there. Mine was just a little bit different. But let me give you a different perspective, because this is really fun. I think some of you relate to this. So all of you relate to this. So when, over the holidays, we always get these care packages. And lovely to get elementary kids packages. They send you these little letters and stuff. You have no idea. Do you know what a little kid's going to say when it comes out of his mouth? Talk about fear and anxiety, right? You have no idea what they're going to repeat to your company or your family members, right? So this letter caught my eye. And so I had to take a picture of it. I've had this for 20 years now. And it says, "Dear troops in Iraq, I really appreciate you fighting for our country, A-R-E country. I bet you are scared of being killed." Very insightful, by the way. Just like I'm scared from being hit by the ball in dodgeball. So how can you tell me that there's any difference from what I face, what you face here every day, to a child in 5th grade that sends a letter out of Kentucky that talks about his fear, and he relates it to me at the very basic terms, right? Oh, beautiful, right? Just like I am. And I love, you know what his name is? Now, if I embellish the story, yes, but no, his name is Christopher, and I like the first part of Christ in there, yes. So what I ask you today, folks, we have a few minutes. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I wanted to share some things with you from a military side to show you that we're very spiritual, and that when you're that close to it, you understand it, and that you have the ability to do things and change things. The battlefields and things that I just described, they're no different from the things that you face. If you need to pick something up from that pool, or whatever that station in life is, to change it, do it. Pick it up. What are you waiting for? Pick it up. If you're carrying that burden, lay it down. Lay it down. Why would you carry that? Those spiritual, emotional burdens, man, they weigh a whole lot more than physical weight. Let it go. Let it go. What I'd ask you to do is, when I asked Joe's got these cards. We have 25 of them. So I didn't get the order in, but it's called Take 5. Again, you see I like this 5 thing, right? So the Take 5, and my friend made these up, and oh, by the way, I got to tell you this. So you know the captain that ran up to me and told me that, "Hey, sir, it doesn't look good, you need to say a prayer"? You know what his name was? Very good, but no. His name was Moses. Moses came to me and asked me to say a prayer for everybody. So Moses, I'm still good friends with him today, by the way. And we go back and forth, and he works for this company, but he gave me these cards. They're called Take 5 Quiet Cards. It goes back to solitude, right? So Joe, on the way out, is going to hand you these, and I'd ask you this week, sometime this week, I'd ask you take 5. And take 5, when we say that, kind of the military and probably different organizations, that's taking a knee, that's drinking water, that's breaking from your daily routine for a second. I'd ask you 5 seconds, 5 seconds, just to be reflective and be present where you are. Enjoy where you are. Smell the flowers, look at the clouds, whatever it is, just 5 seconds, all throughout the day. Just enjoy and appreciate where you are, appreciate that you're alive, appreciate that you're a citizen of the United States. Then I'd ask you for 5 minutes. Go a little bit deeper on the 5 minutes. Be grateful, blessings. Maybe call a friend, whatever that is, for 5 minutes. Just take 5 minutes out. But 5 hours, I'd ask you 5 hours here, and sometime next week, 5 hours, that you have a spiritual date with yourself. A spiritual date with yourself. What does that look like? I don't know. I'm figuring it out, too. You guys tell me what that looks like, right? But have a spiritual date with yourself. 5 hours. Maybe that goes to a museum. Maybe you take a walk. Maybe you just read a book. Maybe you watch a good movie, watch a good Christian film, whatever it might be. Just take 5 hours. I guarantee you start doing that all the time, it will change your life. It will absolutely change your life. So he's going to do this. He's going to give it, and each one of them says a little different thing. If you have the whole deck, it would tell you a bunch of stuff like read, see, call a friend, or whatever. Mine says reading. In other words, to read notes, poetry, essays, speech, lyrics, and stuff. It's not meant to be a Christian thing, but I absolutely, that's what we do, is we adopt it and take it and make it our own, right? So, yeah. So I'd recommend you do that. Folks, let's go ahead and turn to our doxology in the back of the pew.